Pat Howlett, I want to talk about what is a Junto, because you started one in this area. You're no longer in this area, at least at this time, and it's been going strong for many years. I'm pleased to be part of one. I want people to know it, learn it, research it, and understand it, maybe create their own.
I actually think it's important, first of all. I think it's important to get, and again, this has nothing to do with men or women. I think it's important to get guys together in order to try and make themselves better guys. Mm-hmm. And so I've been a lifelong fan of Ben Franklin's, actually considered him a virtual mentor. Read everything I possibly could about him. And during the course of that reading, I just want to share some things right now, and then we'll kind of get back to me saying things. But I really want to encourage people to go, not just based on what we're saying, but how this works. So do some research on Ben Franklin's Junto. So it was a club, mm-hmm. and I'll just kind of read this. But in 1727, Ben Franklin and a group of friends founded the Junto Club. It was called the Leather Apron Club. And you may look at that and say, well, that's kind of Mason-like. Well, yeah, it's kind of Mason-like. So the Masons. There were 12 folks in there, and they were tradesmen, artisans, and most of them were just well-read people. So the club lasted 38 years. Now, Martin, the one you and I and the guys started, the BBB, that's been around for at least 10, right?
Mm-hmm, at least.
And these are committed folks in there. So, but what it was is Franklin proposed that a group be formed of ingenious men. So there was a physician, a mathematician, a geographer, a national philosopher, a botanist, a chemist, etc. Here's the cool thing about that. He found it really important to get people together that actually had diversity of things. Now, their thing wasn't to try and, it wasn't like a B&I group. It wasn't like anything like that. It was to make themselves better. And one of the things that's really interesting that came out of, lots of things came out of that. Public libraries, right? Fire department. They had their own lending library. So these guys, these 12 guys to get together, they get together and somebody said, I read a good book on botany. And Franklin would say, could I borrow that book? I've got a great... So a lot of the things Franklin ended up doing, a biggie was finding the Gulf Stream. Mm-hmm. Franklin would go back and forth to Paris, right? Mm-hmm. As a representative of the U.S. during those times, and he found that there was this, the Gulf Stream, and different creatures lived there. It was different temperature and all those things, and the sailors at that time just thought it was just something mythical. They just sail over it. Well, he was the one that actually said, no, there's a real thing there, So my point is, when you're around other men, and women could do this as well, but when you're around other men, and the goal is to actually, try and make yourselves better and try and share things in a group. So again, the lending library, the fire department, the University of Pennsylvania, the voluntary militia, hospital, all of these things were actually great things, and that came from that we all benefit from right now. So these were the things, and you and I have talked about this with the guys. This was the stuff. So when he had this group, there were some questions that were there. And so I just want to read a couple of these things, because this is so much different than what most people think of would be a business group, or this is a LinkedIn group, or again, like I said, a B&I group or something at the chamber. Have you met with anything in the author you last read remarkable or suitable to be communicated to the Junto, particularly in history, morality, poetry, etc.? What new story have you heard? Has any citizen in your knowledge failed in their business lately? And what have you heard of the cause? Have you lately heard of any citizen thriving well, and by what means? Have you lately heard of how any present rich man here or elsewhere got his estate? If you start looking at these questions right here, you start saying all of these things have to do with, do you have any information you can give me to make me a better person? Is there anybody, there's some things, is there anybody, a young person in our community that you've seen that we really should help? Is there somebody that we should stay away from? Is there somebody that we should have come here and talk to us? And over the years, the amazing thing about the Junto that you're involved with is the same guys are there. Mm-hmm. It's not trying to bring in new people. It's not, and continually, and I'm going to ask you a couple of questions because you're always there. So have you heard lately of any character attacked, and how have you defended it? Is there any man whose friendship you want, which the Junto or any man can help procure for you? That's LinkedIn. Mm-hmm. When people talk about Napoleon Hill and his book, Think and Grow Rich. Napoleon Hill followed somebody else. Ben Franklin came up with the first mastermind. It was called a Junto. Almost every one of these things that we find, what benefits have you lately received from any man not present here? Is there any difficulty in matter of opinion or justice or injustice which you would gladly have discussed at this time? So there was a big thing. So these were some of the guys that were in this Junto. He was a business partner of Franklin. He was a shoemaker. He was a mechanic. These were just men of the time, gentlemen of fortune. There was a surveyor. This guy was a Quaker. So my point with this is they also had it to where the point is you were supposed to be able to bring up anything you wanted to bring up in an environment that wasn't set for pushback. So one of the rules was I should be able to say something to this group of men that I'm connecting with. And their first thing isn't to think of, well, I've got an opinion on that. I got a perspective on that. Let me tell you what I would do. That wasn't their first thing. Or that's not how that works. That's not a good idea, right? So you were supposed to be able to, in this confines, in this structure, the Junto, you were supposed to be able to talk with those folks there on any subject and be able to talk through it, not against things. And many times when we're talking to people in most groups, they're already trying to think about what they're going to say. We're just getting it out of our mouth. They already have an opinion on it, right? We're saying something, they already say, no, that's wrong. And we see that more and more in our culture from the left and the right and all those places that no matter what you say, I'm not going to listen to you. And at this time it was, say what you're going to say. I may not agree with it, but I'm going to be better for having heard it and heard your position in it, and then be able to ask intelligent questions about it. So that was, so that's the thing that I think is important. So when we look at what a Junto is, it's a structure. In the Junto we started, there's a time for folks to go around, and some of the things, Martin, when you guys talk together, what are some of the questions you ask at that Junto?
Well, one of them's just like what's working. Just have a place to own some wins with, of accomplishments, insights, things that have worked, what's important to you, what's going on, what would you like assistance or discuss with the gang?
Exactly. And you're in the Raleigh area, and sometimes you talk about what's going on in Raleigh, right?
Right. What's going on? What would you like? What would you like help with, assistance, but most important, let's kind of claim our wins that we have that occur. And
exactly,
what have we done? Yeah.
And in 10 years, in those 10 years, I moved back to Colorado, right?
Right.
A good Junto wasn't dependent upon Ben Franklin. It's not dependent upon Pat or Martin or anything else. It's dependent upon the wins there. And over those 10 years, lots of things have happened with the men that meet them. And it's still a safe environment because it's not a business networking thing.
Right.
It's still a safe environment for you to be able to talk about you and your wife, your family, what's going on, some of the other men's. When we as guys have challenges, where do we go? Where do we go as guys? When we just think it's just us against the world, or I don't have anything, I understand the business part's taken care of. We can always get people to get together and talk about business. And hey, if I give you a referral, will you give me a referral? If I help your bet, there's all those quid pro quo things out there. But where can you go? I would love to see Juntos start back up everywhere. But where can you go as a guy where it's a safe structure, where people are going to accept you? They understand that the diversity of ideas and thoughts that you bring is why they go there and why you're there, right? That Martin's supposed to have an expertise that helps me. Pat's supposed to have an expertise in life values and things that help Martin. And so to me, a Junto is something very much missing in our male society. And again, I say this not as this isn't the Spanky and the Gang's female women's haters club. You know what I mean? This is just guys getting together in a good construct that allows them to bring their best to help other guys and get the best of other guys, so we all become better men. And so that, to me, that's what that is. And because it's very easy. At the time we were doing that, you remember the time we did the BBB?
Yeah.
We also had an online network of about 5,000 people.
Right.
What we got from the 10 people or so in our group, no bad thing against the one with 5,000 people, was just much more influential in our lives, right?
There's several things I want to bring up. One is over the years we've had people say, "Why don't you have women there? Why don't you get a woman's perspective?" And I really want to talk about that, because when men have the courage to start getting together at this level, where we can talk about personal and business at this level, this is very rare. That people don't realize how rare it is. It's plenty of guys working together. Let's just make money. This takes time to develop the courage to actually trust each other, to allow each other to contribute to each other. And this is something I don't know that all women understand, and a lot of men in isolation don't know. It's going to take time. This has taken a long time to develop some work. It takes showing up consistently. It's being there through thick and thin. It's inspiring each other to be better men. And this is something I actually challenge that we've almost completely eradicated in our culture. And I boldly will say, I believe a lot of the problems in our culture is men more isolated or just in an aggressive hunting environment, one or the other.
Yeah. So here's my thoughts on that. My thoughts on that is the folks who say that, why aren't there women there? Why don't you get a women's perspective? Or why don't you almost act as if, I'll use your word, almost act as if Pat Howlett's in isolation and I have no women influence in my life.
Right.
Okay. I was influenced by my mom. People are influenced by their grandmothers. People are influenced by their sisters. I've been married over 30 years now. I'm influenced by my wife. I have 2 daughters. I'm influenced by my daughters. It's almost like I understand guys are simple machines. Okay.
Yeah. Right.
We're pretty simple. But the reality is, when I would go to the Junto, the experience is when another man there asks me about things that are happening in their life, and it has to do with maybe a woman in their life or whatever. I can still, I'm not a woman, and I don't bring out my feminine side, but quite frankly, I'm almost insulted that the definition of a guy is so watered down that I can't have any kind of maternal thought at all.
Yeah.
Find many men that are real good men that when they put a baby in a lot of guys, and you know what, you'll see some maternal come out of a guy. I know it comes out of me.
Yeah.
But I'm not in a vacuum. I'm not a guy running around in a vacuum. That the only way I can be trusted to be in the world is if I'm around a lot of other people to watch me.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
So it's not people think that you're being exclusionary.
Yeah.
They have this idea that if you don't let everybody in the club, the club can't be any good, because the only thing that makes a club good is lots of diversity. Now, I'm a guy that says I love diversity. I'm Irish. My family came over. God bless America, because potato famine was a bad thing. Okay, and we came over and we weren't really wanted here. Okay.
Yes.
So I understand inclusion. I understand a group of people acceptance. I understand those things. This has nothing to do with that, though. It's a place. You guys meet how often?
We meet once a month. And it's the first Friday of every month. We do our best to keep it at the same place.
Yep. So here's the thing, Martin. Should anybody be worried about a bunch of guys getting together once a month, 12 times a year?
Yeah.
Like somehow or another, we're going to have an impact on anything's out there. It's not a political group.
Right.
It's not a business group. It's not the female women's haters club,
Right.
The gang group. Okay. It's not any of those things. What it is, and I'll go back to your point. What it is where in the world, in our country, where can we go as guys, where you can act? The amount of suicide with men, the amount of men that actually haven't figured out how to move on from other things, the amount of men that actually, I can't be a man because I need to tough up, rub some dirt in it. Big guys don't cry. We have a real problem with defining what a guy is and what a guy's allowed to be. And the reality is, when you get men together and they actually can have some, and I don't mean vulnerability like I want to share my stuff with Martin, but I'm saying where's a trusted environment that a guy can go to when things aren't well? And you would say you share your wins.
Yeah.
You know what? Sometimes sharing your defeats helps somebody. One of the things I just read you. What person have you seen with the Ben Franklin did? What person have you seen that has failed in business, and what was the cause?
Mm-hmm.
Well, that wasn't so somebody could laugh at him, or that was the guy was an idiot. So let's not do that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I believe that, quite frankly, there are a lot of problems. Men not being in the head of their household. Men, there's abuse issues. I actually believe that if you could get guys together, and I think women should encourage men to go to a Junto.
Mm-hmm.
If you encourage your guy to go to the gym so he's not fat, you should encourage him to go to a Junto so he doesn't have a fat head. So he has good stuff. So the brain is being exercised too. Mm-hmm. And so some things can be said that actually make you say, you know what, I didn't really see it that way. Yeah. You know, I think if we didn't have such, we're getting so tribal that quite frankly, we don't have to worry about men. Mm-hmm. We have to worry about tribes. Mm-hmm. Because there are white guys on all sides of the thing. There are black guys on all sides of it. It's not like us guys have some kind of secret handshake and we get together. We're trying to, you know, kind of pinky in the brain. How are we going to rule the world? Yeah. You know? But I'm telling you what really bothers me is knowing there are men out there that have no one they can go to when there's a problem and they don't know how to act, that are killing themselves because they feel they failed in business because the coal mine left or their jobs left or in the Rust Belt. There's real issues. And if we could get guys together in an environment that allowed them to try and the goal being, I just want to be a better man. And if I hang around with other guys, I'll say this. My dad said, and lots of people have said this, Pat, you will be known by the 5 people you hang around most. That's who you will become, the 5 people you allow to get closer to you. And I, you know, and he got on me one time about a guy I was hanging around with. And I said, but Dad, I can hang around Herbie. Yes, he's a jerk. We're trying to help him. But my other 4 guys are awesome. He said, all right, you got me. He just left me alone. Because if you keep, there's you and 9 other guys let's say there's 10 in the group. If you can be around once a month in an environment with, and again, these aren't 20, these are 12. These are, if Jesus did it with 13 disciples or with 12 disciples, they're not made to be big. Then it's not about business. It's not about those kind of things. If we could do that, Martin, I think, so what is a Junto? It's all the things we just said. And if anybody ever does watch this thing, try and find a group of men that you can associate with once a month, that any conversation that helps to make you a better man and helps them be better, then helps that will help your families be better. Mm-hmm. That will help your communities be better. Those kinds of things have a ripple effect. So if you have an opportunity, go do some research on Ben Franklin, on his Juntos, on the Apron Club, and see if you can do that, because we're so much into this. We've got to create a business group. Mm-hmm. We've been so corporatized. We think the only worthiness of getting together sometimes has to have some connection to business, and it doesn't. It has to do, to me, it has to do with the connection of how does Ben Franklin had, you know, when he was, I'll get off this in a quick, but when he was about, I think it was about 18 or so, 16, 18, right around there, he wanted to be a better person, and he came up with his 13 virtues. So I encourage everyone to go out there and try and find the 13 virtues. And he had a book, and he would say, okay, today, you know, I wasn't very thrifty. Today, I didn't do these things. And the whole thing was to try and help create himself to be a better person. And anybody that researches him knows that he liked women a lot, okay? He liked to drink a bit, you know? And he wasn't a perfect person by any stretch of the imagination. And his thinking was, no one will be. Mm-hmm. But if I can continue to try and be the best version of me and keep having a version 1, a version 2, a version 3, and as long as I'm here, I'm trying to make a better me, then I'll do better stuff. And I challenge anybody to find somebody that didn't, as the course of their life, didn't do more individual things that came out of the association with other men and the association of trying to be a better person.
I also want to talk about the fact that in not doing this, our sons don't see a model. And if you look at the crisis with boys today of isolation, giving up, suicide, acting out, almost to me seems a logarithmic crisis going up. And one of it is not having places to go, not having this, you know, not developing your own natural, not that it's not great to have a therapist if you need it, but what about an organic group of men in your life that support you, and work together and think about what's going on, where you can bring up the issues with it. I brought up in the Junto the passing of my parents. There were a lot of decisions that I brought to it as well. And I'm also in another men's group, which offers another with it. And it's very valuable to understand this takes time to develop. This takes some work. This is not something men immediately in history don't just walk up and really trust each other. This is something that we have some illusion that exists, and it's not true. It takes presence, working over time, and showing up.
Well, here's the thing. The handshake, we do the handshake now, and the handshake makes it seem like, hey, Martin, good to see you again. The handshake was an act of trust.
Right.
You do not have a knife. When you put your hand out there and it's the right hand, and most people are right-handed, I know you're probably not going to kill me right now, at least at this moment. So most of these things, so trust is a tough thing, right?
Yeah.
So what I encourage folks to do, I've got, and I know when people say this, it kind of sounds trite, but I've got 2 daughters, and I want them in an equal world. Mm-hmm. I want things to just be fair, but in an unfair world. Mm-hmm. It bothers me that we're even talking about equal pay for equal work. When that goes through my head, it's almost just, the math doesn't work on it because it just seems to be so logical. Why are we even talking about that? Okay. Mm-hmm. So I don't see any of these things as, again, the boys club. Okay. Mm-hmm. I'm against the boys club, mm-hmm. because that's using power over people. Mm-hmm. What I'm mostly interested is in empowering people. And so I would encourage women to create a Junto. It's not a guy thing. Mm-hmm. You can get a group of women together, and the whole goal isn't to try and do, the stuff that's already done out there, but the whole goal is to help each one of you become a better woman. Mm-hmm. Because if you get I'll say this, I miss the guys in my BBB. Mm-hmm. I love those guys. Mm-hmm. Those guys, I admire those guys. Okay. Mm-hmm. When I see those guys around social media, whatever, I have an entirely different connection to those guys, mm-hmm. than any other guys except my own sons and brothers and those folks, because we mean something. We matter, right? We matter. And so what I just said, if you're not able to say that, if you come across it, you're not able to say something like that getting together with other men matters. Mm-hmm. And it's not, I'm playing fantasy football today with a bunch of, it ain't the same. Mm-hmm. I'll have fun with the guy, but it ain't the same as what they're. So again, Martin, I'm a passionate believer in getting men together. Again, not for business, but get together specifically to find out how we are constantly improving, to match our mettle against other good men, mm-hmm. to try and be the best you can be with the 10 people you can surround yourself with, to try and see examples of folks that are younger that are coming up, because we have younger folks in our group. We have some older guys in our group. Mm-hmm. Stages of life, the perspective, not opinions, but the perspective mm-hmm. those folks brought in is immeasurably valuable. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, I'm passionate about it. I know you are as well. And all I can say is, if somebody can do it, I encourage you to get online. Mm-hmm. That internet's not a fad. It's not going away. There's stuff's out there. Mm-hmm. Do some research on Ben Franklin, on his Junto, and then go down that rabbit hole a little bit more on what did they do? Why did they do it? What were their questions? What was the intent? And you will understand exactly why we have libraries and fire departments mm-hmm. and why those things came out there. It's because when folks get together and share in an open and honest way with trust and a desire to do things better, everything gets better.
Yeah. One last thing I want to talk about is setting up the group and starting with the core, get a few together, and then also letting close to a consensus of choosing the people to add. So it's a very important thing when you bring someone in. I mean, I've had people that I wanted to bring in, but there wasn't a critical mass of consensus to bring them in. And so that's another important thing. When you do this, there'll be people you'd like to include, but it just doesn't have the critical mass of consensus to bring them into it. It's very important. It's a group that you've got to understand has to be protected and recognize you don't just get the vote, you know?
Yeah, I don't, here's the thing. I don't know what's right, okay?
Yeah.
But I do know what's been done, okay? Ben Franklin invited these men.
Mm-hmm.
This was a Ben Franklin. Ben Franklin didn't, it wasn't like Pat and Martin got together and said, hey, listen, I'm trying to think of this Junto. You know anybody?
Yeah.
The Junto that's still going on there, in all frankness, those were all my guys.
Yeah. Yeah. Good point.
The good thing about it is all my guys knew my guys, and
right.
so they've known each other. And that's why I picked those. That's why I had that draft, right? Because I knew that Martin really appreciated Dan and Tim and Gary. And I knew those guys connected together. And you could see based on, because it can't get any easier, based on how they did their walk, how they walked in business, how they walked in their social media, how they walked in things, that this would be a great group of people to bring together. So I don't think it's one of those things to where it's like a BNI group and we start with a core group of people, then we start interviewing people and trying to do these things. I don't think it really starts out that way, and I don't think it should. I actually think that, Martin, if you didn't have your own Junto, and we were talking about this, I said, Martin, I want you to go out and find 12 people that you can lead the way this is, and you can get that culture around that, and don't worry about if you're at 5, don't worry about it. It will start coming as you become better and things improve. You'll see somebody. So in the early days, I was never like really big about, hey guys, we're missing a seat, let's fill the seat. Never. So I think it's not, the beauty is not that. So if somebody's interested, whoever that you is, you go out there and start finding but I think you cap it at 12. If you get a group of guys together and 6 or 8 are working and it's good, you're good. Okay. So I don't think it's number, it's kind of quality. I do believe you need to make sure everybody understands this really isn't, we all met about business. So that was kind of how it's intrinsically in our Junto, but it doesn't really have to be about business, and you don't want to be about business because then it gets to be quid pro quo. People start keeping score. It really should be about, again, most of the guys in our group, they don't do the same thing. They're in different kinds of things. I don't even know anybody's religion. You know what I mean? I know no one's religion in our group. That wasn't important. You know what I mean? Because lots of different religions can make lots of great men, right? And there's lots of great religions that can make a lot of bad men. So that doesn't do it itself. So I would think that if somebody's doing this, don't worry about how do we grow this. You get 5 guys together that'll meet once a month and go through this process of trying to, what's it going on? Where's it is? What have you learned really big about what you're doing? Hey, you're a sales expert. I'm having some problems in that area. Can you mentor me? If you do those kind of things, it'll work out well. I think people try and make things bigger than they need to be. So I'm against expansion for expansion's sake. The next thing I think you really need to do is when you do have that group together, and we did it, no one even remembers, but we did it long 10 years ago or whatever. It really was and we used the Ben Franklin model, not the Napoleon Hill mastermind. I'm not a fan of that in all frankness. I'm a fan of the Ben Franklin more approach. I'm not a fan of the Tony Robbins kinds of stuff. I like Ben's kind of approach. But at the very set stage there, you set up, these are the parameters. The same thing Ben Franklin did. This is what we do. Here's the questions. Here's what we're doing. These are the rules of engagement so that everybody knows that they're not going to be attacked. That's stupid. You're not going to have the left and the right in a room together. In this regard, you should be able to have liberals and conservatives getting together and actually finally talking in a Junto, right? And saying, you know what, I disagree with you here, but that one point you made, that I didn't see it that way. So I know that was a little bit of a ramble, but I think it's really important to focus, set the ground rules ahead of time, find those people, and then create your Junto. Now, does that mean that when I create this Junto that, hey, Martin, you got to be in my club? No, it's never my club. I mean, I'm gone. I'm gone for 4 years, right? It's as good or better than when I was there. The beauty of it, so could somebody leave and go someplace else? I should when I first got to Trinidad, one of the first things I tried to do was put a Junto together. My mom wasn't well, and other things in my life kind of went, so I couldn't commit.
Mm-hmm.
So the first thing you have to do is you have to be able to commit.
Yeah.
And I know that may sound like an excuse or whatever, and it probably is.
Mm-hmm.
But I would love to have what you guys have.
Yeah. Yeah. And consistency, commit, give it time, don't move it around. It usually doesn't work well to move these things around a lot. We were very careful when we moved. Remember, we tried it and moved it. We moved it because we had several of the guys that had family needs, and it served that they didn't have to travel as far to take care of their family. And so that worked out well. Now we've been at the same place for a number of years too. So,
and again, those decisions were kind of easy as a group, because it was what's in the best interest of the guys.
Yeah.
Right. And I mean, here's a cool thing, and I think you'll agree with it. And I know the guys in this group, none of our wives, none of the women in our lives, my mom knew I had a Junto going on. Yeah. My dad did. My wife did. Because none of them ever said, "Why don't you ever let women in there?"
Right.
They saw the benefits of it.
Right.
No, and it wasn't from a "don't let girls in there" or whatever. It wasn't like I want to be there. It was like they saw the benefit of me being in that.
Yeah.
And was like, "No, you don't change a thing. That seems to be working for you. You seem to have a support system. You're a little more easy." So don't worry about this boy-girl kind of thing. There's too much on that elsewhere.
Yep. Excellent. Well, thanks, Pat. That's why I wanted to just have a discussion and invite people to look it up, research Hopefully this inspired you from a few ideas. This has been it's a great resource for me. I appreciate you getting it going, and so do the other guys. We were trying to do this interview with them in the restaurant, and it was too complicated. So
yeah,
I thank the guys for being the surrogate to have this conversation as well. And this was appreciated. Inspire other guys to do this. Look it up.
I say this heartfeltly.
Yeah.
I love the guys in that group.
Yeah.
They are fine men. And it was, and I don't know if you can say that in all groups and all things that you're in. Every one of those guys is somebody that I would love as a next door neighbor. Yeah. I'd love as whatever. So, and why is that? Was it immediately that? No. But it's because you get in this Junto, and you let that kind of thing flow, and you find out that there are some really great people. Mm-hmm. And once a month, 12 times a year, and maybe you take Christmas off or whatever.
Right.
Hardly an investment.
Yeah. Yeah. Sounds great. Thanks, Pat.
Thanks for the opportunity, Martin.